Supergirl opens June 26th. That's just over 3 weeks away. And here's what Warner Brothers and DC Studios have managed to accomplish in the lead up. Reported tracking between $47 and $65 million opening weekend, a worldwide projection around $350 million, a reported total exposure of roughly $245 million when you combine production and marketing, and a lead actress interview cycle that has somehow become about burner accounts, Christian dads, superhero homework, and whether pissing off the quote-unquote right people means you're doing okay. Peter Safran reportedly called Millie Alcock after an earlier round of backlash and told her she was doing great. Cool. Let's check the math on that. Because this is not a video about whether Millie Alcock has watched enough superhero movies. This is not a video about whether one actress said the perfect sentence in the perfect tone to the perfect audience. This is a video about how DC is trying to launch a brand new cinematic universe while still acting like the press tour is optional bonus content. It's not. In 2026, the press tour is part of the product. And if you lose control of the press tour before opening weekend, congratulations! You just gave your movie a side quest nobody asked for. Welcome back to The Critical Nerd, where we keep our expectations low, receipts high, and superhero studios under constant supervision because apparently leaving them alone with a microphone is still too dangerous. And if you're returning, thank you and welcome back. You already know the drill. If you're new here, this channel covers entertainment industry chaos, box office math, franchise management, and the increasingly impressive corporate art form of spending hundreds of millions of dollars just to make the audience ask, do these people even like us? Today we're talking about Supergirl, and before the comment section starts stretching, no, this is not going to be the lazy Rachel Zegler 2.0 video. That comparison is sitting right there. It's obvious. It's also too easy. The smarter question is not, did Millie Alcock say something dumb? The smarter question is, why is DC, after everything Hollywood has learned the hard way over the last 5 years, still allowing marketing conversation around a major franchise film to become about whether the audience feels insulted? Because Supergirl's not some disposable streaming spinoff buried on Max next to the 7th animated Harley Quinn adjacent project. This is supposed to matter. This is supposed to be the second major DCU film after Superman. This is supposed to prove that James Gunn and Peter Safran's Chapter 1 is not just one good launch movie and then right back into the swamp. Superman was the proof of concept. Supergirl is supposed to be the build-out. And if the build-out is already surrounded by tracking concerns, interview backlash, and press cycle cleanup before the movie even opens, that is not a talent problem. That's a management problem. Supergirl is not just Girl Superman. That is the lazy pitch. The actual story based on Woman of Tomorrow is supposed to be darker, stranger, more cosmic, and more emotionally damaged than the classic Superman formula. Clark Kent was raised by loving parents in Kansas. Kara Zor-El watched Krypton die. That is a completely different emotional foundation. That should be a strong pitch. You have Millie Alcock, who is genuinely good in House of the Dragon. You have Krypto because Hollywood has finally discovered that dogs are box office insurance. You have Jason Momoa as Lobo, which is one of those casting decisions that makes you say, well, at least somebody in the building read the room for 5 consecutive minutes. And you have the DCU trying to convince people that Superman was not a one-movie miracle. So the marketing job here should be simple. Sell Kara, sell the cosmic adventure, sell the emotional difference between her and Superman, sell Krypto, sell Lobo, sell why this movie is not just another bowl of superhero sludge poured into the content trough, but instead the conversation has already drifted. And once the conversation drifts away from the movie toward the press cycle, the studio is no longer selling a film, it's doing cleanup. And cleanup is not a genre people buy tickets for. Now let's get to the receipts. Page 6 reported that Supergirl is tracking for a domestic opening somewhere between $47 and $65 million. It's also reported a worldwide projection around $350 million. The reported production budget is somewhere around $170 million. The marketing spend is estimated to be somewhere around $75 million. That puts the total exposure around $245 million. I'm going to call it $250 just to be even. as far as round numbers. Now, if we're using the standard rough theatrical math, I'm going to be nice here. I'm going to say double, 2 times production budget. That is going to get you the break even on the total spend once you account for the studio's share of ticket revenue, marketing, and distribution, somewhere in the neighborhood of, we'll just say 500 million worldwide, just to not become another awkward line item in a Warner Brothers earnings call. And current reported worldwide tracking is $350 million. Now, gotta say this, tracking is not prophecy. Tracking changes, reviews matter, word of mouth matters, marketing can improve, a great trailer can shift momentum, a strong Superman halo could help, and Hollywood accounting can always find a new portal to Narnia when it needs one. That is a warning sign, because Supergirl is not opening in a vacuum. It's opening in the shadow of Superman. It is opening in a superhero market that is still trying to convince people it's not exhausted. It's opening after years of DC brand damage. And it's opening while the conversation is already being pulled away from the movie itself. There's the problem. Not one quote, not one actress, not one interview. The problem is that when the numbers already look soft, every extra controversy becomes a tax. And DC does not exactly have a giant pile of spare audience goodwill sitting in a vault somewhere. They spent that repeatedly, usually on fire. Now let's talk about the quote. Millie Alcock did an interview with Variety, and she said the following, and I quote, "It's from a lot of people whose profiles have no photo, who are burner accounts, data for, Christian, which is hilarious. If you're pissing the right kind of people off, you're doing okay." That's the quote. Now let's be precise, because precision here matters. She did not say she hates Christians. She did not say she hates fathers. She did not say dads are bad. What she appears to be saying is that she dismisses anonymous online criticism, especially from accounts she sees as bad faith or agenda driven. And honestly, that part, it's not insane. Actors probably should not build their self-worth around burner accounts with profile pictures of eagles, Punisher skulls, and 2014 pickup trucks. Fair enough. But here's the problem. She took a sentiment that should have been, I do not read anonymous online negativity. And it became, if these people are mad, or if those people are mad, I must be doing something right. That's not a PR strategy, that's a posture. And postures have box office consequences, because dads with daughters are not some imaginary demographic for a Supergirl movie. They're part of the audience. Families are part of the audience. Casual DC fans are part of the audience. People who watch Superman and might be willing to give this new universe a chance are part of the audience. So if the takeaway from your price cycle becomes the star thinks some chunk of the audience being annoyed is evidence of success, that's not helpful. Even if the quote is being exaggerated, even if bad faith accounts are milking it, it still changed the subject. And changing the subject before opening weekend is not free. Then there's the other interview beat. Millie Alcock also said she had not seen Wonder Woman, Captain Marvel, or Black Widow, and joked that this was probably not great. And here's where I'm going to annoy both sides a little bit. I don't care that much. Really. I do not need the actress playing Supergirl to sit inside a sacred cave and watch every female-led superhero movie like she's preparing for the bar exam in spandex jurisprudence. In fact, not studying Captain Marvel might be a creative advantage. There, I said it. Nobody needs more corporate superhero acting when the performance feels like it was assembled from previous brand-approved facial expressions. Millie Alcock is an actress. Her job is to play Kara Zor-El as written and directed in this movie. She does not owe a pilgrimage to every Cape movie that came before her. So the problem is not that she skipped superhero homework. The problem is that this became a headline. There's the issue. Because when a lead actor is promoting a major franchise film, every quote becomes part of the marketing ecosystem. Fair? Not always. Healthy? Absolutely not. Reality? Yeah. And Hollywood keeps acting shocked by this every time. As if we have not watched years of movie press tours become content farms, reaction loops, outrage cycles, apology cycles, counter-apology cycles, and then studios quietly moving embargoes while pretending none of it matters. The modern press tour is not just entertainment journalism, it is brand risk, it is audience management, it is franchise maintenance. And if your lead star says something that lets the entire conversation become, does she even care about this genre? Then the marketing team has lost control of the story. Even if the quote is harmless, even if the outrage is exaggerated, even if many people reacting never planned to buy a ticket anyway, it still moved the conversation away from the movie. And that is the part DC should care about. Now here's where Peter Safran becomes part of the story, because Safran has made a very specific argument about the superhero genre. He said the problem is not superhero fatigue, the problem is mediocre movie fatigue. And honestly, that is one of the better things the studio executive have said about this genre. Because he's right. People are not tired of superheroes when the superhero movie's good. People are tired of homework. They are tired of cinematic universes that feel like employee onboarding. They are tired of being told the next movie will fix the last 3 movies as if they bought a ticket to a shareholder confidence seminar. They're tired of brands demanding loyalty they no longer earn. So Safran's argument is smart, but it's also a trap. Because if the market is fine, if the audiences are fine, if superhero fatigue is not the real issue, then Supergirl does not get to hide behind structural excuses. If the movie underperforms, the explanation cannot be, well, audiences are just tired of superheroes. Safran already rejected that, which means the movie has to perform. The marketing has to perform. The press cycle has to perform. And if Supergirl opens soft, the question becomes much sharper. Was the movie mediocre? Was the marketing mediocre? Was the audience management mediocre? Because Safran handed critics the rubric, and the press cycle handed them the headline. Safran called Alcock after Backlash and told her she was doing great. That is the part that matters. Not because Millie Alcock needs to be punished. She does not. But because the studio response tells you how the studio sees the problem. A course correction would suggest, we understand the press cycle is creating avoidable friction. Validation suggests, we think this is fine. And if DC Studios thinks this is fine, then that is much more interesting than the quote itself. Because that means either they do not understand that the press cycle is upstream of opening weekend, or they understand it and have decided the online commentary ecosystem is not worth managing. Either answer is a problem for Chapter 1 of the DCU. Here's the actual argument. The Millie Alcock situation is not really a Millie Alcock problem. She's 26. She came from House of the Dragon, which is an HBO prestige series with a very specific, very adult, very online fan base. That environment rewards actors who are direct, dry, weird, blunt, and authentic. That's the brand. But DC Studios cast her in a very different product. Supergirl is a PG-13 family-accessible superhero film that needs a broad audience. It needs comic book fans. It needs casuals. It needs dads with daughters. It needs young women. It needs Superman goodwill. It needs the people who skipped the last 6 DC movies but might be willing to try again. That's a wide tent. And a wide tent movies need wide tent communication. It does not mean every actor has to sound like a Disney Channel robot. It does not mean you sand off every edge until the human being disappears. But it does mean the studio needs media infrastructure that matches the assignment. Because this is not a normal movie. This is a franchise pillar. This is a universe-building chapter. This is a test of whether Superman was the beginning of a new DC era or just one clean launch before the familiar chaos returned. And if the studio cannot keep the messaging discipline 25 days out, what exactly are we doing? Again, the press tour is part of the product now. That is not new insight. The Snow White situation made that very clear. The lesson was public. The trade coverage was extensive. The comment sections were radioactive. Disney learned it the expensive way, and DC appears to have watched that entire disaster and thought, interesting, what if we tried the version with capes? That's not a talent problem. That's a management problem. Now let's talk about the obvious comparison. Rachel Zegler, Snow White, press tour backlash, audience alienation, and box office disaster. Hollywood learning absolutely nothing except how to look surprised on earnings calls. I mean, it's all sitting right there. And yes, the comparison is useful, but only if you use it correctly. The lesson of Snow White was not actresses should never talk. That's the dumb version. The lesson was that when a movie already has brand vulnerability, the press tour cannot increase the vulnerability. Disney was trying to sell nostalgia while the lead actress spent multiple interview cycles distancing herself from the original property. That created a contradiction. The audience noticed. The movie became a referendum before it became a movie. And by the time it opened, the conversation was bigger than the film. That is what DC needs to avoid. Not because Supergirl is the same as Snow White. It's not. Different genre, different audience, different studio situation, different baggage. But the structural lesson is the same. If you're selling a franchise film in a trust deficit, the press tour cannot create more trust deficit. It has to reduce it. That's the job. Right now, Supergirl is flirting with the exact opposite. Now, let's be fair. Supergirl's not dead. I mean, 3 weeks is a long time. Tracking can shift. A trailer can hit. Reviews can be good. Word of mouth can save a movie. Superman goodwill could carry over. Crypto could be a bigger factor than people expect. Jason Momoa as Lobo could create curiosity. And the movie could simply be good. I mean, all that's possible. I'm not saying Supergirl is doomed. I am saying, though, that Supergirl is vulnerable. And vulnerable movies do not need extra problems. If Supergirl opens closer to 50 million domestic, that becomes a story. If it finishes below the reported break-even zone, that becomes a bigger story. If it performs at roughly half the level of Superman, that becomes the narrative around Chapter 1. And then everything else gets looked at differently. Lanterns goes into production under a cloud. Every casting decision gets scrutinized. Every trailer gets analyzed like financial evidence. Every interview becomes a risk event. Every Gunn quote becomes a shareholder's seance. And that scrutiny will not just come from Christian dads on Twitter. It will come from the trades. It will come from analysts. It will come from investors. It will come from YouTubers. It will come from Warner Brothers Discovery leadership looking at the new DCU and asking the same question everyone else is asking. Can this universe actually sustain itself? Because Superman working is one thing, building a universe is another. And if Supergirl stumbles, the DCU's problem is no longer, can James Gunn make one Superman movie people like? The problem becomes, can this studio build momentum beyond Superman? That is a much harder question. And it is exactly why this press cycle matters. There's a bigger problem out there for DC. Tone control. DC is not just trying to make movies, DC is trying to rebuild a relationship. That relationship has been abused by reboots, recuts, canceled universes, streaming pivots, corporate mergers, fake endings, abandonment cliffhangers, and enough leadership changes to make the average fan feel like they need LinkedIn Premium just to follow the continuity. So when DC launches a new universe, the job is not simply make good movies. That's step one. The job is make good movies, make them clearly, keep the stars aligned with the pitch, avoid antagonizing the audience, control the story, and stop assuming people owe you the benefit of the doubt, because they don't. DC spent that benefit of doubt years ago. Marvel spent most of theirs too. Lucasfilm took theirs into the backyard and buried it under a pile of Disney Plus analytics. The entire franchise economy is running on reduced trust. And in a reduced trust environment, tone control matters. The trailers matter, the posters matter, the social media copy matters, the tracking leaks matter, the lead actor interviews matter, the way studio responds to backlash matters. All of it matters because the audiences are not just evaluating the movie anymore. They're evaluating the smell around the movie. And if the smell becomes, here's another Hollywood production that thinks the customers are annoying, good luck selling that back to the customers. That is the danger. Not Millie Alcock herself, not one quote, not whether she watched Wonder Woman. The danger is that DC is trying to launch a new universe while still behaving like audience goodwill is automatic. It is not automatic, it is earned. It is very easy to spend. So here's the bottom line. Supergirl is not in trouble because Millie Alcock did not watch every female-led superhero movie. It's not in trouble because one interview quote exists. It's not even necessarily in trouble because of current tracking because, well, tracking can move. Supergirl's in trouble because the movie is already being pulled into a defensive conversation before it has had a chance to define itself, and that is a studio problem. In 2026, the press tour is not separate from the movie. The press tour is the movie's first act. The trailer is the movie's first argument. The tracking is the movie's first report card. The lead actor interview cycle is the movie's first customer service test. And right now, Supergirl, it's not failing that test, but it is definitely sweating through the exam. If Warner Brothers and DC Studios are smart, the next 3 weeks of marketing will be painfully simple. Sell Kara, sell Crypto, sell Lobo, sell the Cosmic Adventure, sell why this is not just another piece of superhero homework. And for the love of Krypton, stop letting the conversation become about whether the audience is the problem. Because audiences can forgive a lot. They forgave Batman nipples. They forgave Jared Leto mailing weird gifts. They eventually forgave DC for whatever the Flash was supposed to be. They did not forgive Henry Cavill's CGI upper lip because that was not a visual effect. That was a hostage situation. But audiences can't forgive a lot when they feel like the movie's for them. What they do not forgive easily is being told, directly or indirectly, that they are the obstacle. And that there's the risk for Supergirl. Not the cape, not the casting, not the comic book homework. The risk is tone. And if DCU Chapter 1 falls apart, it may not be because audiences hate superheroes. It may be because studios still have not learned how to talk to people they expect to buy the tickets. So let me know what you guys think. Is Supergirl already heading for a box office problem, or is this just another online outrage cycle that disappears the second the movie hits? Drop your opening weekend prediction in the comments. I want to see where all you land out there. Like this video if you got value out of it. Subscribe if you want receipts first entertainment analysis without the studio-approved group hug. And share this with someone who still thinks superhero press tours are harmless. And as always, keep your expectations low and your receipts high. I'm the Critical Nerd, and I am out.